Hey everyone, we're back with another university segment of the Reimagine 2020 Virtual Blockchain Conference. I'm Ashlie Meredith, Head of Education at MouseBelt Blockchain Accelerator, and we've got Deidra McIntyre, founder of Black People and Cryptocurrency, on the show to talk about barriers to entry in the crypto space and what's going on with historically Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs, we might refer to it in this conversation, in regards to blockchain education, and accelerating startups. So welcome to Reimagine. Deidra, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be a part of Reimagine 2020. I'm glad that everyone's keeping the ball rolling in terms of virtual conferencing and getting the information out there, because I think that's most important in this time. If anything, if you're stuck in quarantine, or if you're out of quarantine, always take time to learn to improve your skills in blockchain. So I'm doing great.
Well, thanks for joining on. I really appreciate being able to have this conversation with you. We both worked together in the past to drive blockchain education. You're an educator for decades, same as me, in academia, high school, all of that. So I think we'll have a great conversation about these specific issues at universities and beyond. But tell me first a bit about your background. How did you get into blockchain, and then how did that lead you into founding Black People in Cryptocurrency?
Well, my background, I actually have a bachelor's degree in journalism and a master's degree in education. And it seems not to connect to technology, but there was a technology stint kind of in the middle of all of those two degrees. I excuse me, I originally started in secular journalism, but about a year into community journalism, had an opportunity to work for a mom and pop software development company on Long Island called Educational Activities. They're no longer around, but they were based in Baldwin, Long Island, not far from me. And I worked 3 days a week. And that was my first introduction to so-called open source software. It wasn't called that, but at the time my role was basically to find the developers free software for them to finish the product that they were trying to make in a CD-ROM. So because of that, I was introduced to using CompuServe and using gateways to this thing called the internet and Archie and all kinds of different protocols of pre-web type protocols and early web type protocols. And once I had that bug, even though I would continue on with journalism for a couple of years, I was always writing columns about the web, this web thing, and how you could search for jobs in your pajamas, etc. Landed a position in '97 at a .com company called theglobe.com, which is actually a precursor to Facebook, MySpace, and even the Community Connect publications such as Black Planet and Asian Avenue. So we kind of were like the genesis of this so-called web-based social media, kind of the intermediary between what AOL and CompuServe were for dial-up modems. Then you had the web platforms, which was GeoCities, theglobe.com, iVillage, that sort of thing. So that was our peer group. And MySpace came along shortly after us. Then I left because I got burnt out. So as a 2.5 years at a .com in New York City, I kind of didn't want any parts of it. I wanted to teach people about education, but I just really didn't want to do it anymore. At least I thought I didn't. So I went back and got my master's degree. I was a teaching fellow in New York City, and I was getting my master's degree at the same time I was teaching in Brooklyn, a school called Franklin Kaleen High School, which also doesn't exist anymore. It's replaced by charter schools. But this, I was teaching computers, but I also, because of my journalism background, ELA. So after about 5 years of teaching, I kind of had calmed down and kind of got back into the groove of things. Started my own web consulting business, doing small non-for-profits and small community websites. And someone asked me about 2016 if I would write a plain English document on Bitcoin. Because I'd worked with this person before. He was basically a VC, and he was like, I keep getting asked about Bitcoin. I don't know what it's about. And I know if you don't know what it's about, you're good at explaining things in plain English. So I'd heard of it. I told him I'd heard of it, but I didn't know anything. I heard of it in around 2013, but I kind of dismissed it. I watched some gamers talk about it, and I thought it was a video game token. So I dismissed it. I was like, I'm since Pac-Man, I'm not really, I'm not as much of a gamer, so I don't know what's going on. And he says, I have full confidence in you. These are some links I have. Another colleague of mine says, I got a bunch more links here, throw it together. Wrote that document from September to November of 2016, and then my eyes were open. And then I sat and watched most of 2017 go by until the summer. And how Black People in Cryptocurrency came about was during that time period, I was being solicited a lot for BitConnect and other MLM programs, you know, $100. And I knew, I was like, why would I pay you $100 a month when if I wanted to get it, I just go to exchange and get it. Or I would just go to an ATM and get it. You know, I realized that there was a disconnect within my peer group, a lot of whom were people of African descent, and them being solicited by MLMs and thinking this was Bitcoin. And so I launched it as a pushback. And I didn't want it to center just on Bitcoin, so it became Black people and cryptocurrency because I knew how wide the sector it was. And at that time, you're talking about maybe 900 or 1,000 cryptocurrencies according to CoinMarketCap. But that was still, you know, a huge scene. And of course, we're at the ICO boom period. And so it's kind of explaining to people who wanted to speculate, you know, how would they evaluate a company? And we were basically just using my journalism skills and picking out different people on how to analyze different companies and how we verify that they're doing, verify what they're doing, what they say they're doing. So that's the genesis of how it began, as like just to stop people getting burned by scams, basically. And then the other component was that as I was doing that report, I had stumbled upon people who had been in crypto. Black people have been in crypto since 2009. So I would, you know, the guy Eduardo Jackson, who started Blacks in Bitcoin blog, and Sinclair Skinner, who was doing remittance between the United States and the world in Zimbabwe, and the reason why that was important. So I'd stumbled upon these different interviews and different people that seemed like they were disconnected. And I wanted a way to pull them in together so that they can help educate the rest of us. And then maybe we could help their startups. So that's kind of how it evolved in this way of forming this group that would serve as an education vehicle for people who just wanted more information, and also as a support system for startups in the sector.
Absolutely, that's so great. Sometimes, you know, it takes someone to take that initiative to say, hey, we should rally around this one concept, which is all of the amazing Black people in crypto and what they're actually doing. I know that you created a directory of sorts of Black founders in the space. Can you talk more about that?
Sure, that kind of evolved from it is a little problem of getting press, and you know this even with MouseBelt, there's a little problem getting press. It's quote unquote mainstream press in terms of people that are in the blockchain space. So we kind of know what's going on, you know, from Telegram groups and everything else and news media devoted to blockchain. But when it comes time to either write about women or write about Black people or Latino people, some media publication will come out with a list and it'll be like the top 3. And you're sitting there like 3, you know, I know at least 50, you know. And so watching those lists in terms of, you know, African Americans, there literally was a list that said 3. There was another list that he couldn't get to 10, he got to 9. And I was just like, you know, not for anything, if you did search, you know, Black people and cryptocurrency, you would eventually come across our group and see we had at that time, I think, you know, 8,000 people or something like that. You'd think you would reach out to the men's, even if it's not me, and say, hey, do you know any people we can recommend so we can get to like 25? So I became exasperated by the fact that, because this is my former vocation, it's my former field, journalism, and I feel this is lazy journalism. This is, I'm sitting in my room, I'm kidding in my head, these are the 3 people I found, and I'm gonna write about them. Instead of doing the work and doing the legwork and doing the digging, because we're such a small community, it's very easy to find different heads of different organizations that you give me 5 people, you give me 5 people, I got a 100 person list or a 200 person list. So going into September 2019, there's a conference called Black Blockchain Summit that it was basically the oldest conference in the United States focused on Black people in the industry, and it's only 2 years old. I was going to give a keynote and I didn't want to do slides. And I knew going in that even at Black conferences, 99% of the time we're talking about Vitalik Buterin, we're talking about Ethereum, we're talking about EOS, we're not necessarily talking about Black people in the space. So I wanted to make a point of it in a fun way. So I kind of used my education skills. And that list was originally released as an app. So I went in and I said, get your phones out, go to this site, put in a username, we're going to play a game. It's multiple guests. You can't, just try to get, and it was like showing the scores of all these different people, and people were trying to win. And then after it was over, a 25 question test, I said, what was unique about this test? And someone said, well, they weren't really known people in the block space. I said, they weren't? Oh, so who do you think they were? And someone goes, and this is at an all black conference, and all black people in the room. So by the time the third person said, were they all black people? Da, 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 da. So even within our own section, we're kind of conditioned to defer to white men, basically. Because I think it would be just the same to say, could you name women, Asian women, white women, or whatever, you find the same type, response. So I felt it was important I gave it initially to that group. It was 100 at that time, and now it's about 170, because I keep it as a Google Doc. If someone sends me a message or sends somebody in my team a message, we kind of ask a few questions about the project. It's not strongly vetted, but it is lightly vetted, because we do have, everyone has people in the community that's just like, okay, this is a complete smoke and mirror. Yeah. So you're so extreme that there's no way you're getting on this list. But some people are like, okay, I don't really agree with this or whatever. They do make the list. You at least have something going on. Even if I don't think it's all the way there, you're on the list. So we have a little disclaimer. So that's kind of the list to show the diversity and the breadth even within the Black space. So 170 is not to mean all inclusive of everyone in the world, but you have people in real estate, you have people in sports, you have people in gaming, you have people in power, you have people. So not everyone's like, I'm going to make a crypto and everyone's going to use my money. It's the me money. No, and I think that's the outsider's conception of crypto, is that everyone wants to make their own dollar or their own yen or their own euro and put their name on it and claim the whole world. And that's really a small slither. I think on that list, we're talking about it today. The top 70 people are startup founders, and of the top 70 people, 2 of them have cryptos. The rest of them are all supply chain, power, real estate, gaming. It's some type of blockchain, and it may have a token with it or it may not have a token with it, but they're really, trying to concentrate on how do I use this technology to provide a better service for my partners or for the customer using the new technology.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's a conversation that we've been having with a lot of our interviewees, is just the real need to focus more on actual real world use cases for this. And it's great to hear that the list that you're curating has such a diverse range of interests and people who are working on real problems. I know we've been discussing, hopefully getting some people on to talk about NFTs and energy. So all great work there. Since we're still kind of on the topic, just because I think it's an interesting point for our viewers, best practices, or I mean, obviously anyone can get in touch with you, find your list, but just as far as barriers to entry in the space, and anyone who is concerned with doing better journalism or elevating the voices of marginalized people in the space, not being lazy about it, but actually putting in the work to make sure that the voices get heard, that people feel included. I know it's a huge topic, and I would love to talk about it on a specific panel, but while I have you here, maybe just a short advice you can give to the people in the industry who do care about this, but might not be executing it.
Yeah, I think the MouseBelt educational partners, the Educational Alliance, as well as even the students, need to put public pressure on the publishers, not the individual journalists. Because having worked as a journalist, I've worked at 2 different publications, and I've also freelanced for actually some major publications and some minor regional publications. Writers get their stuff changed all the time. And it's almost like a part of the reason why I lean more towards technology instead of journalism, even though journalism is my first love, is because I didn't like that I didn't have final say on a particular article. I've had articles that I wrote in technology. One of the earliest articles I wrote before I started working in technology was on this woman that was, had a startup in Austin, Texas. I don't even remember the details of her startup, but she's one of the few Black women that did it. It was for a major Black publication. The spec was, 300 words, we're paying you $1 a word, oh, great rates and all that kind of stuff. And then when it actually ran, they shrunk it to 150 words, and they changed the lead to say that she moved to Austin because she wanted to enjoy warmer climes, because she was coming from Boston originally, where she went to school, and then going to Austin. And all I could do was cringe, because I knew I had an extensive interview with her. She was from Austin, Texas. So she wasn't going to Austin because she wanted warm weather. She was going because that was a major startup hub for her. So she was going back home. And so, but they completely thwarted the lead. But I had to go back to her to say, I'm sorry, it's not, I didn't have any power over that. So that happens a lot to writers. So I wouldn't put as much burden on writers as much as you should put on the publishers to have the writers dig, because writers do want to dig. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I started writing, just doing Medium articles and not writing for anyone. I didn't want to pitch major publications. I didn't want to pitch a Black enterprise. I didn't want to pitch, Essence or any of the publications, online or otherwise, because I want final say, because you're going to jack my stuff up. And I know from experience of having been that. So sometimes may pick on a writer, but I know the dynamics. Yeah. And I don't know how much control they had in the final product, because oftentimes they don't. It's the editor, and then the editor's response is the publisher, and the publisher's like, well, who owns us and who does this. So you have these various slants of Forbes and others because of who owns them, not because of the writer not doing their job. So we have to put pressure on the publishers to live up to, you're supposed to be, a representative of the people and do a fair analysis of what's going on, and your publication is failing at that. And if that doesn't work, then we just really have to start our own strong brands and just outpace them, like the Huffington Post once did.
Well, speaking of having your own strong brand, that kind of makes me think about the Black people in cryptocurrency's mission of eventually launching their own accelerator. And I know we had conversations about almost a year ago now about bringing you on to help us kind of reach the historically Black colleges and universities in the US, and understanding that we wanted to keep that very much an HBCU thing. That there are particular, you kind of went into it a bit with feeling like your community was being targeted by multi-level marketing scams, that there's particular interests and issues at these HBCUs that you have an insight into, and maybe the rest of the crypto space does not. So we hopefully can defer to you to tell us what's going on at HBCUs. How can crypto get involved?
Yeah, I think so far we haven't made the inroads that we would like to make. So I reach out to the students and everyone else that's watching, that if you know of an HBCU that could benefit from MouseBelt's free education for students and the cultivation of blockchain hubs, to definitely reach out to me so we can make those inroads with those students and get things going. I think we have the strongest relationships probably with Howard and Bowie State. Because of MouseBelt, Roshan has actually, who works for MouseBelt now, has actually reinvigorated a connection, which we tried to do early on with Morgan State. Because it's funny, because the contact at Morgan State, she contacted me, Judith, and it was under like
about that.
It was a generic blockchain, and like when someone like approaches me and it's like not a human face, I'm kind of like, well, who are you? So it was like blockchain, and I can see all the Morgan State stuff. And then I asked her what her name was. I said, Judith Simon. And I was like, yeah, let me forward an email I sent to you a year ago. But she was CC'd, and it was through another professor that was there that I actually had met at Black Blockchain Summit. So we've been trying to reach out to Morgan State for a while. So we're hoping to reinvigorate that relationship. I think when you're contacting people blindly, and they've been so indoctrinated by Bitcoin as a scam type medium, that if they're not in this world and then you reach out to them and say, hey, we got free education, their guard is up. Well, what is this about? And, you know, what are you trying to sell me? And I don't have, you know, so we're struggling with that as well. But in terms of the HBCUs that have been trying to be responsive, the information I'm getting back is that, you know, the schools themselves are in such a financial tizzy a lot of times that they're like, another program, you know, what is this, the cost it's going to be to me? How is there a way for my historically black college to earn some type of long-term revenue, to get away from federal funding, or not as reliant on federal funding, which up until now has been, you know, a tremendous fight every single time it comes around that they're supposed to receive it. They don't have the endowments that as a Harvard, no one has the endowments that Harvard has, but you know, they don't have large endowments to rely on. So it's not the battle that you see at a Wake Forest, where you say, okay, well, they have an endowment and students feel they're not receiving their just due. No, these HBCUs just don't have it. So they don't have the funds. So they're looking towards, to encourage them to look towards this relationship of incubating startups, so that they can have and develop patents and that sort of thing, that become more self-funding is a major thing that we're looking at in terms of if we build any type of relationships with our accelerator. But just like everybody that's Black that's in the space, we just don't get the funding. So we were actually glad that, you know, Jamari Peterson had introduced it to, because he knew what we were doing, because he's from an HBCU. He's from Howard, and Carnegie Mellon also. And so he ran into it as a conference, and he's like, this is the same thing that Deidre's been talking about. What we need, there's one that actually exists, and they're the first ever. So he's like, you've got to meet Ashlie. You've got to talk to Ashlie. And for me, it was a no-brainer, because, you know, if we had the funding, why would we charge for education? What, you know, we would want to have the best type of education program that we have to facilitate, you know, the knowledge base, so that people could actually work within the context of startups. And then we can talk from there in terms of equity and that sort of thing, to kind of self-fund our accelerator. And I think everyone in the world, the interesting thing about the MouseBelt ambassadors is that to see people like, you know, Safe doing the same things in Mexico, and seeing, you know, hearing about people in Spain and other places. Everyone, even if you're from Indiana or Ohio, everyone's thinking about the accelerator model. What can I do to help my community? So my community is no different if it's, you know, University of Miami, Ohio area, or Indiana, or Mexico, as it is, you know, kind of like Black people in the space, or, you know, we all have different specific things that we're trying to counteract. And some of our issues are the same as what I've seen Safe write about a lot in terms of remittance between African nations. The fees, most Americans are not used to sending money. They do it, you know, less than a penny, or pennies on the dollar if they're using fiat, whereas remittance between African nations would be as high as 17% and on average. And that's when they're not arbitrarily freezing your accounts. So that was the history of central banking in African nations, and also in Caribbean nations. That's why you don't have conglomerations of Trinidad and Tobago working directly with Jamaica on a project. You may have Trinidad working with Canada, or Trinidad working with UK, or Jamaica working with Canada, or the UK, or the United States, but you don't have those two working together, because the way the central banking structure is worked out, they make you go this long route. And you have that in Southeast Asia as well. That's why MouseBelt, you know, came about, to kind of soften that type of impact of that situation, that certain Asian nations weren't allowed to work directly with each other. They had to go through Europe, through the United States, or through Canada. And so, you know, these are long-term, basically colonial abuses. This legacy of colonialism that is the reason for that. They use the same excuse as to why we shouldn't use Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Well, you know, drug people do it. So they use that as to why Trinidad and Jamaica can't collaborate. Well, they'll probably sell weed, but most people are not doing that. Crime is crime and business is business. So if those are some of the issues, remittance issues. Within the United States, you have traditional things such as redlining and predatory lending. And so we've always had, customer bank mortgage issues, how much more people are paying. So any type of solutions to kind of remediate those kind of abuses are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of the startups that are within our sector. And then other things are just fun. It has nothing to do with anything race or gender specific. If you're producing a game, you want everyone to play that. You want everyone to play that game. So you have the culture that people just want to be the next Steve Jobs for everybody, for the world. So so we have all those things. We have ethnic specific issues that we're trying to remediate, and we just have great projects that we just want to bring to the world.
Yeah, it's been great to see some of the student projects that come through our pitch competition from places like Latin America and Africa who are actually working on remittance products. Definitely, I have a million more questions for you, but we're running a bit out of time. Maybe focusing back on university stuff and the culture of accelerating startups and why that's important on a university campus in general, because that's like what I do is fostering entrepreneurialism among students, working kind of cross collaboratively with engineering departments and business departments to drive technical innovation in general. And so I have my own ideas about why it's important to have that on a college campus, but I'd love to hear from you kind of in general, what you think about this on-campus incubators and things like that, and then specifically for HBCUs.
Yeah, well, we definitely need more in terms of our organization. We definitely need more hands on the ground. We need more people that are in their face constantly because, with undergraduate university students, you're still dealing with a step away from high school. So with the burden of actually having to take classes and maybe deal with a part-time job, they have the fire for a minute. As soon as you do a presentation, and then it's gone if you're not constantly there. So we're looking for people that, really are by the schools and can actually get in their face and say, okay, let's look at what we've done this far and move to the next level. So the feedback that I've been getting is mainly been, if you're not there, once you present, or if someone presents, because Ryan is presented at Bowie State, once the presentation is gone, the kind of fever kind of goes away because they don't have the direction, and the university professors don't necessarily, you and I both taught, so it's like another thing you want me to do. So, you have support, but they're like, the students will have to really be encouraged to lead. As opposed to look to the professor to what do I do next, like it's another class. So one of the ways that, we really want to create like a kind of a lateral non-for-profit that really serves to basically support to professors in their time, and maybe have a work study capacity for the students that are involved, so they don't have to necessarily think about that side job at the fast food restaurant. Maybe that side job income could come from, their studies and their activities of building within the blockchain sector. We've got to think of creative ways like that. I've also had more extensive conversations about, especially in terms of the African-American community. And there needs to be a earlier concentration on mathematical and STEM support at early ages, so maybe as young as 6th grade. To really kind of cultivate, just like how you do internationally, just how India did and other places did, to kind of, really get people ramped up on the math and early computer programming at an earlier time, so that by the time they come to the university, they're not being slammed and being overwhelmed by their coursework, because I'm hearing that a lot also, that not so much from students that are Black that come from other countries that come to American universities. The same is true in, it's just the mainstream. So if you have, students that are coming from, that are in the United States, that came from Russia or something like that, but they were, already mathematically inclined. So they got this to come here to further their studies. So a lot of times better than students that are born here. So it's the same phenomena in the African-American space, that, they're not keeping as great a pace with students from like Nigeria or something. But students from Nigeria are here for a reason, because they excelled in STEM and were in a program in STEM. So there's this type of thing that we really need to concentrate on very young middle school children, and get them excited and feverish as much as they can relate to capacity. And then also, maybe have a mentorship relationship between the university students and the younger kids, so both are learning at the same time, and then kind of foster that type of growth. Because what I'm hearing a lot of is that sometimes the university students are a little overwhelmed, and so they become quiet. So, and you'll kind of know you're losing students sometimes when they're being respectful and they're being quiet, but their brains are all over the place. They don't know what to think. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know, how to move forward. So I think early exposure is also key. So I'm having different talks and learning from some of the university professors on what they're seeing as professors, and how much they have to remediate as professors in the subjects they're teaching, much less going to include blockchain. And then there's the wider AI and other types of technology as well that are coming to campus as well. So it's like there's a lot of confusions. The kids don't really know which way to go. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And you know me, I'm all about early STEM education, especially for women, people of color. I've developed educational programs in the past, working as a graduate student in college, teaching ethics to high schoolers. So in the back of my mind always is, how do we expand MouseBelt University to start doing some pairing, what a great program that people could potentially even get credit for if you present it to the university, right? Of allowing college students to teach high schoolers blockchain. So I think there's a lot on the horizon. You're doing great work. I can't wait to work more with you on some of these things. For anyone watching, if they want to get involved with Black people in cryptocurrency, or if they want to plug into HBCUs, or if they want to find this list of Black people in the space, or if they want to help you accelerate student projects at HBCUs, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. So it's when you do linkedin.com/in, it's my first name, Deidra. That means I've been on LinkedIn forever. No joking.
I saw that the other day, and I was going to say something about, I was going to bring that up another time, probably about your OG handle. You got
That's right.
OG handle.
OG, I was there for a really long time, and just so happened, like, I think it was at theglobe.com. Somebody mentioned, it was like, yeah, you can put your resume online. This place called LinkedIn. And then, like, when you secure your name, just like do your first name to make it not complicated. So I just got lucky. And then, so yeah, I usually like outreach on LinkedIn. If not, if you could, find a group. The largest group is really on Facebook, because that's where it was founded. So Black people in cryptocurrency. We have a page and a group, but the group is really where all the action is. You can always tag me within the group if you can't message me through Messenger. I'm really bad with checking the other folder. So if you get slammed into that other folder, it's like 3 months later, oh, there's messages there. Or you can DM the page. The page works well. That kind of at least sends me an alert that I can see. But LinkedIn is cool too.
Right. So Deidra on LinkedIn and Black People in Cryptocurrency on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Deidra McIntyre, founder of Black People in Cryptocurrency. Check out what they're doing. They're doing awesome work, and don't be lazy when you're covering you know, underrepresented groups in the space. We're here. Reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to tell you about all the women, the Black people, anyone you want to know. Please get in touch with us. Thanks again, Deidra, for joining us. And
thank you, Ashlie.
We're ready to reimagine 2020.
Absolutely.
You're tuned in to Reimagine 2020. Stay tuned to learn more about the state-of-the-art in blockchain education and technological development all around the world. Reimagine 2020.